Good day, all. It's an honor to be with you all again. Different circumstances, but hopefully we can work with these dynamics as we go to the end of this semester. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. I was expecting that we will be able to see each other again next week, but as you all know, the current circumstances that this nation and world is faced with has put us into this predicament. So it is better safe than to be sorry. But I do hope that you all are taking care of yourselves during this time, and I hope that your families are doing well as well. Before we begin, let's take a moment of silence. During this time, I would like you guys to just sit back and think about just life in general. Those that have helped us to get to this point, and to think about what our role and purpose is as we move forward. Beautiful. Thank you all for that. So first off, again, I hope you guys are well. You all have received all of your papers, and I did my best to provide you all with ample feedback to assist you all not only in your growth as a scholar, but also as an activist, depending on whatever direction you decide to go in. I do hope that the feedback that I provide you will assist you as you move forward. So we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. I do want to address we're going to go into four different topics today. So the first is to talk a little bit about the current situation, put it into context if you've not already done so. The second thing is to talk about your transition from Praxis Paper 1 into Praxis 2. Then we also want to talk a little bit about the text where I have no clue where mine is. I think it's right here. Pedagogy of the Oppressed, which you guys should have in your archive by now. And then finally, to talk about Friedrich Glasl's stages of conflict escalation, which would be your discussion 7. All right. So first off, let's discuss the current situation. As you all know, we are on the verge of I don't know if we can say a verge, but we're in the fire of not only a health crisis, but also an economic crisis, as the two have converged, and has impacted the lives of many people. To a few of you all, it's funny because those of you all that had me in the past, more specifically last semester, I told you all that I think that there's a storm brewing. And unfortunately, I didn't know what that storm was going to look like. And once we began the semester, we saw some signs that said that the world is imbalanced and there's something going on, and we're going to have to, we're coming close to a day of reckoning. And I never would have predicted that this situation would look the way it does now. But I knew that there was something brewing, and we see how this has spiraled out of control. For those of you all that are, I guess, interested in doing some research with and discussion on this, I would definitely think about that moving forward. I think most of you guys are fixed on your research already, but this is definitely something that we can talk about, especially if we apply some of the models of conflict, transformation, and escalation to think about at what point in this crisis could we have intervened? Not necessarily we, but our leaders, quote unquote leaders, could have addressed this issue much more seriously. I do point the finger at the World Health Organization for downplaying this, because there was a point where they could have addressed this and created it as a crisis, and said that it was a pandemic very early on. and then we could have received the necessary resources for that, and may have been able to prevent the spread, but unfortunately that didn't happen. So that's something for any of you all or for us to explore in the future. Moving forward, for those of you all that have remembered my prediction, I said that I gave you at the beginning of the semester, I said to you all, I think I sent a picture, I gave you a picture of the stock market. And I said to you all, if the stock market is lower than it was back in January, the likelihood of us having a re-election or re-electing the president is going to be low. And as some of you all may have heard, the stock market has dropped about 40% since its highs in January. And so putting the re-election into question, but also we are witnessing a time that is unprecedented in regards to what the Federal Reserve has to do in order to save this country from going into a economic downturn. This is a very scary situation, and especially when you have to hear about so many people that have had to leave work. My brother in particular was temporarily laid off, and we're seeing how much impact something that was quote unquote so small and so minute in the eyes of some can now explode to something much larger. And now you guys are seeing the effects of that. So I hope that for those of you all that do have jobs, I hope that they are able to work something out with you all. But as you can see, there are some conversations that we've had specifically around student loans, that now we see that there is a call and talk about student loans and interest not being paid on those. We're seeing that the possibility of taxes being extended. You guys might receive anywhere from $1,000 to a $2,000 check in order to offset the imbalance that has been created by this situation. So let's just see what's going to happen as we move forward. But for those of you all that were prepared and got your toilet paper, now you know that you are in a good position, so that now if stuff gets bad, you can wipe it up with something. Now, moving forward, your papers. For the most part, I really enjoyed reading your papers. You guys have exercised me. I'm not used to doing hard copy papers. It's been a while since I've done that. So I did have the opportunity to do that, and I really enjoyed that process. Usually when I've done hard copy papers before, my daughters were much younger, and when I fell asleep reading some of the papers, they would take the pen and continue to grade for me, and usually it was a lot of scribbles when I returned it back to them. So this time around they didn't get to that. I think one of your papers was destroyed by the dog, but I do apologize for that. Anyway, moving forward. Now, this is a just to reiterate from our last interaction, for those that came to class that last time, I want you all to think of these papers as something that's going to define you. All right. You all have selected a specific topic that speaks to who you are as an academic, but who you want to be if you were to service a community. And so to take this seriously, the first part of the paper, I wanted you all to identify a particular problem. And from that, you now analyze that problem and understanding how this issue is affecting the lives of a certain group of people. That is what you're going to do. That was what we're charged with doing in the first paper. And then providing some solutions on what you think can be done to address this issue. Now, those can be solutions that have already been implemented, or they can be solutions that you see can be advantageous to assisting the lives of these people. What I want you all to do, and this is um, how I'm applying and integrating the book from Paulo Freire is when you're looking at praxis. Praxis is the integration of not only the action side of it, but also the theoretical side. So the first part of this paper is the theoretical aspect, where you begin to look at a situation and begin to see how is this situation affecting a group of people. Returning back to the beginning stage, I am going to be working on a piece that looks at the economic crisis and the coronavirus, and looking at what in the world happened here, and at what point did we miss the ball. All right. And so anyway, so with that being said, what is that problem? And now how do we develop solutions for it? So moving to the next paper, this is the Praxis 2 paper. The presentation that I have online for you all is the final part of that looks at the policy aspect. And from that, I want you all to think about the five aspects of effectiveness. When we look at a policy, was the policy designed or law designed, why was it designed, and is it doing what it's supposed to do? All right. And that's the question that you all have to ask yourself, because most of you all have identified a specific topic, but now I want you all to link it to a policy. How does this policy, when this policy was established, what were the intentions of the policy makers? And when we return to that policy, is it doing what it's supposed to do? And from that, we're looking at how a group of people have been negatively impacted by a political decision. All right. And so now these individuals are stuck dealing with and coping with this. So you can look at the war on drugs. You can look at mandatory frisking. Climate control. You guys have the topics, so you all have to now look at these dynamics and say, is this helping to benefit us? Case in point, years ago, the 2008 crisis, when that hit, there was the solution was, oh, we're going to go ahead and save the big banks. All right. And so with that being said, money was spent, was distributed to these companies to prevent a further economic crisis. But now when we return to that, 12 years later, was that policy effective? And now we are revisiting that conversation and saying, well, who were the people that were hurt by this? And as you can see, it's, middle class to low income people were the ones that were negatively affected by this. So just begin to think about those decisions that the people have made, policymakers have made, and the impact that it has on the people who are non-policymakers, if you will. Now, the next part within the Praxis 2, and the description of this is on your assignment page, is now that we have identified the problem, we've analyzed it, what I want you all to think about now is you all are going to design some model, a perspective, or some kind of approach that can assist those people who are directly impacted by that policy. All right. So this is something that some people were kind of missed a little bit in the first part of the paper, is that you have to think about how you are going to engage community. So going back to the first book that you guys read, Transformative Change. All right. How are you going to now engage a community to deal with this issue? All right. And that's what you all have to think about that paper as, how do you transfer this to the people? That the people who are affected by a particular practice, how are you going to inform them of this, and then work with them or collaborate with them to influence what we call change, and sustainable change. That is not just something that is a temporary fix, but something that addresses the solutions hands on, addresses the problem hands on, and is something that is going to sustain itself over time. All right, and so that's what you guys are going to be charged with doing for the next round paper. Those papers. Oh, so the way this works out is your Praxis 1 paper. You're going to take my comments and feedback, and you guys will incorporate that into Praxis 2. So now you're just taking Praxis 1 and now fusing it with the next part of Practice 2, so you'll have this larger paper. So a considerable part of your paper is already complete. Now you guys are putting the finishing touches, because now you're going to be adding in these theoretical aspects and components from these books and models in order to complete your project. All right. So, and of course, I am available to you all. So some people have emailed me or called me. So you do have access to me. Just make sure you do not wait till the last minute in regards to developing this final part of the paper and completing it. All right. So with that said, let's talk a little bit about Pedagogy of the Oppressed. I did update your Canvas, where you have 2 discussions that will tackle this book. I broke it up into 2 parts for you all. So just to give you guys a little history, a little information on this. I say this to many of my classes that I use this with. I don't believe that if you are a person who believes yourself to be a change agent or wants to be a change agent, this is the necessary book that you have to have in your archives. I don't care if it's a hard copy or electronic copy. You have to have this book. This book was written in the 70s by Paulo Freire. This is a Brazilian who began to look at the situations affecting the people, specifically the peasants, in his native land. And during this time, the country was under a coup, where anybody who spoke against the government in any shape, form, or fashion, that is through in the education realm, whether it be entertainment realm, anything, would have been persecuted. Either they would be exiled or they would be killed. So when this book was written, this individual was actually exiled. But the fact of the matter is that it's a critical text to begin to understand what is it that we're missing when we talk about the oppressed people. What are their conditions? And one of the pieces that comes out from this is the notion of silence. Why is it that the oppressed are silent? Is it that they just have nothing to say? They're not informed on the situations that are at hand, or they are not safe with the social conditions that exist. Thereby, they are not going to allow their authentic voices to shine. And so this is what you all have to understand, is that the oppressed have a voice, and it's up to you to assist them in extracting that voice so that we can develop transformative change. The next thing about this piece, and we've talked about this a few times, is the oppressed are a group of individuals that have been dehumanized, whether that be because of when we look at Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the fact that particular aid or particular opportunities, resources are not accessible to a group of people. Anything that is used to hinder the full anything that's used to hinder an individual's or group's ability to be fully human is a form of oppression. So understand that. Any force that is used to hinder an individual or a group from being fully human being the opportunity to breathe, the opportunity to sleep, the opportunity to think, to eat, whatever, to live. Whatever is used to hinder the basic needs of an individual to be fully human is a form of oppression. All right. Now, what we're doing and what we are charged with doing is, how do we begin to rehumanize individuals in a situation that they have been victimized in? All right. And you have to think about when you're working with your population of people, or the moving forward, when you want to work with a population of people, how will you talk to them? How would you address their issues? How do you identify these issues and communicate it to them in a way that they understand and that they're willing to um, invest themselves in making change? All right. And this is what Frede did with his work, is going to working with the peasants and spending time with them, learning about their situations, and beginning to see that the reason why they are oppressed is not because, excuse me, the reason why they are silent is not because they're uneducated. It's the fact that they're not safe in a particular context, and because of that, they have now used not allowed their voice to speak against the system because they knew they would be persecuted. So when you look at the pedagogy of the oppressed, and this is in your book, I believe, what, page 54, you're looking at how the oppressed are able to understand their current situations, as we say, the limit situations, and learning to and helping them to now find the I guess you can say that drive, that the humanity within themselves, so that they're able to now communicate their humanity to the world, and more specifically, those that are hindering them from becoming, excuse me, those that are hindering them from being fully human. The pedagogy of the oppressed is not meant to say that the oppressed are going to use the same form of oppression um, that was used against them against the oppressor. That's not the objective of this. The objective is, how do we use our own form of persecution to educate not only ourselves but also the oppressor, in order for all of us to come together and address the whole overall situation that is hurting everyone. All right, and that's what your pedagogy is about. So that's going to be the first part of this piece. When you go into the second aspect of the pedagogy of the oppressed, you're now looking at the educational aspect of it, the importance of dialogue, and when we have our own classes with each other, I always ask you all, what are your thoughts on this? Give me more, tell me more, etc. Because we want to be able to create that dialogue with each other in order for us to understand the situation at hand. You all come from various experiences and backgrounds, and you all see a situation from those different various experiences. So, what if one of you has a way of looking at life in a way that I don't have, or the person next to you has? But maybe we can tap into that experience, extract that, and then somebody next to you say, hey, you know what? I never thought of it like that. Then we can begin to fuse these or integrate these two worlds, and allow them to merge together, and then we create sustainable change. And that's when we have these conversations about integration and collaborative work. The word that's coming to mind is interdisciplinary. Is that's where it comes from? Is people from various worlds begin to look at a problem differently, but then say, how can I see obesity in this way. Okay, well, when I saw obesity in a particular way as a personal trainer, um, I went to a session one day on virtual reality, and you have this individual that's doing virtual reality, and then you have another person that's in the world of nutrition. I'm like, hey, we all see a problem. Let's talk together. And from that, we were able to generate about $35,000 plus on just an idea on addressing obesity. And then we move forward with that. And that's what I'm talking about, is how do you all begin to look at a particular situation and say, we can work together to address this issue and make sustainable change. All right. So more on that as we move forward. Finally, I want to go into Friedrich Glasl's stages of conflict escalation. I do apologize again. I wish that we did not have to. I don't want to say we ended, but that the semester had to, take the turn that it did, because I did, as you can see, retrieve the movie War of the Roses, the War of the Roses. I rewatched the film this weekend, and so it's a very entertaining film. You guys would love it if you ever have opportunity to watch it with a group of friends. But when I wanted to watch the film, when I was looking at Glasl's Escalation of Model, and I'm coming from a marriage and family therapy background, I'm looking at how these concepts and these terms just find themselves in so many different interactions. And so to kind of give you guys a piece, I uploaded another assignment, discussion number 7, which is a relationship or a couple that this model, you can utilize this model to understand that dynamic that the couple is engaging in. But when we look at our own situation, these are 9 stages of conflict escalation. It's recognizing that conflict, all right, and beginning to see how this begins to emerge, and I should say how it begins to escalate as you move forward. And at what point do we get to a point where we can say we can end this conflict and reverse it to go back to a possible win-win, to work on collaboration? What is it that what is it that two parties are missing, that this process just goes into this 9-stage process where you move from a point of tension, which is always constant, to this point of annihilation. All right. And annihilation can look, when we think about annihilation, doesn't have to be destruction as in death, but it can be just relationship disintegration. However way you want to look at that in a particular situation. I look at it in the sense of divorce. I gave you guys some examples of signs that you can see, potential conflict that people have if you look at a house. Yeah, just because the picture is tilted in a way, that doesn't necessarily mean that, it's just, maybe the house shook and then the picture tilted. No, it might be strategic, and it might say something or represent something more to that individual than we don't give credit for. And so if you rush in and begin to make those changes and shift that picture, you see how that conflict just can go from 0 to 100 in no time. All right. So this is something for you, and thinking about this and putting everything together in your work with communities. All right. I think we talked about this, but when you think about a community of people who have been so downtrodden, they find ways to cope with their situation. All right. How do you escape the negative reinforcer? How do you find a way to escape from your situation? So when we think about drug abuse, alcohol abuse, whatever, people are finding ways to escape their situation because it has pushed them down so far, so deep, that this is the only way that they feel as though they can deal with that situation. So we don't want to just judge individuals and say, look at that person who's taking drugs. There's such a problem. But maybe we need to first examine the social structure to which they're a part of, then begin to understand how the individual has responded to those behaviors. Once we're able to take that approach, I believe that we can begin to make changes and work with people, because we can see that each person is affected by society's practices in a different way. And rather than us just persecuting the individual, we can now point the finger at the structure and say, if we are able to shift that structure, maybe we'll see how much impact that would have on the people. Malcolm X, after he had returned from his trip to Mecca, he was asked by one of his reporters to say that, we heard that you changed. And Malcolm X, he laughed and he smiled at this reporter, and he says, changed. He says, you know, how can a black man in America change when the system and the structure to which has made us who we are has not changed? And you have the wrong man. And essentially what he's saying is that we may be able to, move around and may have a different approach to addressing a situation. But if the root cause of a problem has not been addressed, then that person is still oppressed. All right. How we deal with the oppression is different, but the root causes of what makes us who we are has not been addressed. And this is the problem that I see so much in society. My wife and I got into a conversation yesterday about, about behaviors of people who are in leadership. And it's like, she's expressing these conflicts and these issues as it revolves around race and gender. And I'm just like, until we address, the true root of the causes that make us who we are, we're not even having a conversation. All right. You have to heal people who have been victimized by a system of oppression. And if you do not heal those individuals, then all of these other practices just continue, and behaviors and interactions just continue to happen over and over again. They put stress on the people who are oppressed because we're the ones that have to deal with it. They put us in a point of depression because we have to deal with this. The elite, they can live their lives and have a good time and, enjoy their mocha lattes and their, driving in their Ferraris, whatever. They're not affected by the issues, but we are the ones that are affected by the issues. So how do we take this experience and communicate it to the elites that you are impacting and hurting the lives of other people by the things that you do on a daily that you think are normal, but they have an impact on the lives of other people? And that is how you create that pedagogy of the oppressed, is when you're able to educate the elites in understanding, or the oppressor in understanding, that their actions that they're doing are hurting and hindering the humanity of other people. Then we can get to a point of working together to achieve these changes, to achieve changes to humanize or rehumanize the overall human population. All right. So anyway, I'm going to look forward to seeing some of your posts when you go into discussion 7. The clip from the movie, I found another clip from a movie that you guys would probably like to see. And it happens so quickly when you look at this interaction. It's only a 3-minute clip. So you guys can actually jump into discussion 7 now and deal with that. But, you guys will be entertained by it. So anyway, I don't want to take too much of your time. I spoke for about 32 minutes, and we'll probably go to 33 minutes. And I do wish you all the best. I love you all. I wish you guys, I wish you all the best. For those that are graduating, I wish you good luck. And please stay in touch, and I will be making a video soon. Be well.